How do? My name is Andrew Hancock and I am a VMware technical architect from Yorkshire in the United Kingdom. I have worked with VMware since their birth in 1998. So that's been a quarter of a century now. I've been working with the VMware product catalogue. Some of my close friends say if you cut Andy in half, it reads VMware like a stick of rock from Blackpool Pleasure Beach. I have now written over 130 articles and recorded over 30 hours of VMware vSphere 7 and 8 videos for Experts Exchange, and received 40 Expert Exchange awards over the last 11 years working with the Expert Exchange community. I am currently the overall #1 point earner in the Hall of Fame. I am honoured to have been accepted into the VMware vExpert program since 2011, and I'm currently a VMware vExpert Pro for the last 4 years. And welcome back to another Hancock's VMware half hour. This is probably going to be quite involved. It may be longer than 30 minutes. And this is a sort of kind of continuation of the last video I did, which was where we looked at VMware Converter to synchronize changes between physical or virtual machines to our environment in replication from Azure or Hyper-V to VMware. But one of the issues that we can get into with VMware Converter is it cannot synchronize changes. We can't use the synchronization option if file level copying is in use, because it can only support synchronization on block level changes. And this becomes more of a problem if you've got UEFI modern servers, because it can't use block level changes on those UEFI partitions. So I did suggest that we were going to look at a third-party utility called Zerto. And Zerto is a third-party product that you can download a trial of and you can purchase that can provide protection across on-premises, hybrid, multi-cloud environments to do disaster recovery, data protection, and replication. So here we go. So I'm going to connect back to the last machine that we used, which was our web server, because you can't install Zerto on a non-server operating system. And once you've downloaded all the zip files and unbundled the zip files, in this particular environment, of course, we are VMware. So I'm going to go to I've already downloaded and bundled all the zip files, and I've got our Zerto virtual replication appliance VMware installer. So I'm just going to double click and I'm going to follow the prompts. Does surprise me about one of the prompts that I've seen, which confused me a bit, and maybe it needs updating. This is the latest. This is 9.5, and I'm referring to the Zerto recommends installing Zerto Virtual Manager and vCenter Server on separate computers. Well, you can't actually install Zerto Virtual Manager on vCenter Server 7 anyway, because vCenter Server 7 is now an appliance based on Linux. It's not Windows anymore. Yeah, and it does also turn around and say that Zerto 9.5 and later VRS can only be installed on hosts running 7.0 and later. Anyway, so yeah, I don't think that's ever going to be a problem, because Zerto Virtual Manager is going to require a Windows server, and Windows is long gone. Anyway, so without further ado, I'm just going to click next. I'm going to accept the license agreement, followed by next. Yeah, I'm going to accept the standard default location, followed by next. Yeah, let's just go with the Express installation, and it wants my vCenter server connectivity. So I'm going to do vCenter 7.cyrus-consultants.co.uk with my username and password. Just going to delete that. Wants a site name, so we'll just call this EE Lab. Followed by next. Yeah, it's going to go off and validate. I think I've got those credentials correct. It's telling me that those credentials were wrong. Just going to check again. Typo there. Administrator. Okay, so it's a good catch. Okay, so it can register the plugin. So we're going to click run, and while that's running and doing its thing, I will disappear, and I'll come back shortly. So that's completed nicely. So I'm going to click open the Zerto manager interface, followed by done. I'm going to click proceed. I'm going to log in with the vCenter server credentials. I'm just going to tick remember me as well. Just going to paste my license information in. And hopefully this will all start up correctly. So the dashboard's not telling us much at the moment, but the first thing that we need to do is that we need to deploy what Zerto calls VRAs, the replication appliances, to our two vCenter server clusters. So I'm going to just click setup, and I'm going to click new VRA, and I'm going to select cluster name, the EE cluster. I'm going to select our vSAN data store. I'm going to select VM network. I'm not going to change the RAM, the CPU, or the bandwidth groups at the moment. I'm going to use DHCP followed by install. So I didn't think you wanted me waffling on all through that. Okay, so we've deployed our VRAs to all the hosts automatically from within the setup option on this management service. So I now have to go to my other cluster, my other vCenter server, and repeat exactly the same. So I'm going to go and use that server that I created on the other cluster, and I'm going to repeat exactly the same thing. So I've repeated exactly the same on the other site. And I'm actually basically ready to pair the two sites. So I need to generate a pairing token. So I'm going to click generate pairing token, and I'm going to click copy. And I'm going to go back to my other site, which is 141.245.136. And I'm going to specify, I'm going to paste the token there, and I'm going to give it an IP address of 192.168.182.105, and I'm going to click connect. Hopefully we don't have anything between 141 and okay, it's looking good. So again, the same, I need to, okay, it's complaining about some metadata that it can't obtain from some ARM hosts in this cluster. Okay, it says that it's completed successfully. EE Lab and EE, I actually called the site. What I'll probably do is I called both lab. This is the EE lab, and I should have actually probably called the other one the Cyrus lab. I'll see whether or not I can just change that. Just one moment. Okay, so I fixed that little site topology. Cyrus lab, EE lab. This is the Cyrus lab. And I just went to site settings there and changed that information. Okay, we have to do exactly the same thing in... I honestly don't know why it's actually saying that ESXi 10 is host is 6. That's not right. But anyway, so we need to deploy VRAs. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing again. I'm going to go new VRA and I'm going to deploy them to our 3 hosts 6, 8 and 10. Anyway, just as an aside, I think that was the reason why ESXi 010 was reporting as being 6.0, because we've got a purple screen of death. Anyway, just as an aside, there's again, these machines in the lab are not on the HCL. And this is what happens if they're not on the HCL. And also I'm using a non-approved VIB, VMware-ESX-SAS IRCU. And I suspect that that's what is causing the problem on this host. Anyway, so I'm actually basically logged in via the equivalent of ILO. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a server power off because there's not much more we can do with a purple screen of death, a PSOD. And I'm just going to do a power up again. And hopefully, there we go. We'll wait for that to boot. And hopefully we'll be able to sort out deploying all those VRAs to our other labs. So it all happens here, you know, and in fact, ESXi 010 is actually scheduled this afternoon, if I have some time, to have a little look at the networking, because I've got some real issues with networking on it, which is, I think, to do with an SFP plus to RJ45 converter connected to some fiber gear. And I just don't think that the Ethernet to SFP plus fiber converter is working at all well. Anyway, so that's just as an aside. That machine is now booting. I will come back shortly. So finally, we have our VRAs deployed in our Cyrus lab site to 6, 8 and 10. 10's now back up. It's no longer got a PSOD, as you saw. So that was the reason why it was being reported as 6. So the VRA status is installed in our Cyrus lab site. And if we just go to our EE lab site and we have a little look at the setup and the VRAs, and again, we've got our VRAs or appliances installed on 7, 9 and 11. So we're now ready to actually basically create virtual machine protection groups, and we can start moving, restoring or failing over virtual machines from one site to another site, which was the whole purpose of doing this video, in actually showing you that we can use Zerto to move, replicate a Windows Server 2003 UEFI, which we can't do with VMware Converter. So I've created VRAs on all our ESXi hosts in both sites or both labs, Cyrus Lab and EE Lab. If we have a little look at the dashboard here and have a little look at our sites, then you can see EE Lab. And before the site topology, I renamed EE Lab to Cyrus Lab. So I've created a protection group and I've called that the Web 2022 because this is a Windows Server 2022 server that I've built, which is UEFI, and I'm currently in the process. If I just quickly show you, I can just create a new VPG And I've actually basically selected data mobility and migration, and I've given it a name, test VPG. I've set it to high. You can put it in the description, followed by next. You select your virtual machine, followed by next. You select the replication site, and we want to replicate it to EE Lab. Use particular host and the data store, and you followed next and finished. And that's exactly what I've done here. And as we can see at the moment, the initial sync, this is like the initial first sync that we've done using VMware Converter. So this is what I'm doing at the moment. I'm doing a first initial sync. But one of the differences in using Zerto, that because we've actually specified a 5-minute interval, it will actually continuously ensure that that virtual machine on our EE Lab is actually basically in sync, and we don't have to worry about that. We can just leave it do that. So what that does give me the ability to do, that does give me the chance to update our 2022 server with the updates. I'll add Internet Information Server, I'll add PHP, and while I'm doing that, all those changes are going to be automatically synchronized to our EE Lab site and our the Web 22 virtual machine. Now, all the heavy lifting here is actually done by those replication appliances that are on our hosts. The Zerto manager here portal is actually basically talking to those VRA appliances, but they're the ones that are actually basically doing all the heavy lifting. Whereas before, we actually installed VMware Converter actually on the machine itself. So I've not installed anything on the machine to do this conversion. All the heavy lifting is being done by those actual appliances. And you can see here that the initial sync is almost completed, and we could, if we wanted to, effectively continue the move and the workflow from our Cyrus Lab across to our EE Lab. But at the moment, I'm still in still at the point of configuring that virtual machine, and I just actually wanted to sort of kind of show you if we can. I don't think I've actually even enabled RDP on it yet. If I go to wrong one, if I actually launch a web console to it, then I can sort of kind of show you that I'm in the process at the moment. So if I do restart, so those appliances are still doing the replication between the source server and the destination server. So I don't have to worry about the fact that I'm restarting the VM in the middle of all this. And I'm going to carry on basically doing and adding all the updates. And I'm going to add PHP. I'm going to add Internet Information Server, turn on RDP whilst the sync is happening in the background. So the initial sync has actually now completed, and if you look at the information that's being provided to here by Zerto, it's actually telling us that our actual RPO is 5 seconds. So what that really means is that that's 5 seconds worth of data, which is lost in the event that we need to power up the Web 2022 on our EE Lab environment. And so it's actually reporting it's 4 seconds. So that's 4 seconds worth of data lost because we've got this continuous synchronization that's basically happening now between the two environments, Cyrus Lab and EE Lab. And if we actually basically have a little look at the dashboard, then it's actually basically showing us a high-level dashboard view, telling us that it's currently meeting an SLA, and it's actually showing the WAN traffic and the throughput and the IOPS. It's dropped slightly to average of 9 seconds. Now, if we actually go back and have a little look at our environment, we will see here that we actually have this mysterious, it's not really mysterious, but this here, ZVRH ESX001, this is our virtual machine. So this is the virtual machine that's actually being replicated currently. And at the moment, I'm just actually shutting down and restarting. waiting for it to apply updates. So I will be back shortly when I complete all the PHP, complete Internet Information Server, complete all the updates on this server while it's replicating, and then we will failover or migrate and move this particular virtual machine, this Windows Server 2022, to our EE lab. So the Web 2022 Windows Server 2022 with Internet Information Server has now all been completed in Cyrus Lab, and I can demonstrate that by quickly going to the website. So this is a website that quickly knocked up out of PHP, and probably really the fascination with PHP is, and I must actually sort of kind of reach out to Richard Quadling, who is PHP dev and expert, and he was the guy really that sent me on this journey with Experts Exchange. So don't blame me, blame Richard. So I hope you're well, Richard. All the best, and I'm thinking of you. But anyway, so this is probably reason that I've used PHP to quickly knock up this web server. But you know, like I'm not a web server developer or designer. So this is just a quick IIS web server with PHP to demonstrate that it is actually running some sort of service. So this is still being replicated with Zerto in the background. So if I just actually basically go to that's the wrong server. Apologies, I keep losing my mouse. I don't know why. There we go. Sorry, apologies. This was the server I was supposed to go to, which is 105. So you can still see there that the actual RPO is 5 seconds, and we can have a little look at the dashboard, and we can see some IOPS, and we can see some throughput, and we can see some WAN traffic. We're still meeting the SLA. So that particular virtual machine in Cyrus Lab, our Windows Server 2022, is currently being replicated in real time to our EE lab. And as I've got to mention to you before, our EE lab sits here, and you can actually see that virtual machine there. Now, for shits and giggles, and that red mark there probably again is that host memory issue that I told you about that we've got. So I'm going to reset that to green. Yeah, and I still haven't actually basically bottomed out those system log issues on 9 and 11. So we'll ignore that for the moment. We'll carry on. So I'm going to go to 136.110, which is our Windows Server 2022, which is booting UEFI, because that is there is no legacy BIOS facility in Windows Server 2022. It is UEFI only now. So we're going to do exactly the same sort of thing that we did before. For shits and giggles, I'm going to do a convert machine. I'm going to specify that it's this local machine. I'm going to click view source details. Okay, so we can see the source details there, and it's these partitions here that the conversion in sync mode has issues with. So again, I'm going to specify our vCenter server. So initially we're just going to do a standard conversion, a standard P2V V2V conversion, and specify the username and password. We've done this before, and I'm sure that if you've been using VMware Converter long enough, then you've seen this as well. We're going to ignore the certificate, and we'll call it, I'll just call it -A, followed by next, and I'm going to use our vSAN data store. We'll put it on number 9, followed by next. We want to use the sync option, so I'm going to say synchronize the changes. I don't want to perform the final sync, followed by next, followed by finish. Now, this is what I actually basically wanted to show you, and synchronization cannot be enabled if one or more of the volumes require file level cloning, and the file level cloning is necessary because of those 2 UEFI partitions that are created. So this is the reason I was suggesting to you in the last video I did about VMware vCenter standalone converter, or VMware Converter for short. If you are going to use VMware Converter because you need to migrate a Server 2022 or any other UEFI based Windows Server 2019, 2016 also support UEFI, you will struggle with sync mode with VMware VM Converter because it's not supported. So we have to look at other options, and this was the reason of actually looking and having a little look at the Zerto product, which can do this replication for us quite nicely. So let's go back to our Zerto portal panel, and let's prepare to move and migrate this workload off our Cyrus lab to our EE lab in sort of kind of the same way that we actually sort of kind of did in using VMware Converter with a 2019 server. So our virtual protection group has been replicating all afternoon and capturing all those changes that we've been making in this Windows Server 2022 web server, which is running PHP, which is running a tiny little application reporting IP addresses the host, IP addresses the client, and just showing some Experts Exchange core images. We can see that the actual RPO is 8 seconds. So as I mentioned before, that's 8 seconds of business loss when we fail over. And this is the clever bit of Zerto that personally I really like. So now we want to fail over or cut over because we're doing this mock migration from a Hyper-V or another vCenter server, or could be Azure, or anything to on-premise VMware vSphere, providing that we've got sufficient bandwidth. So we're going to click move virtual protection group. Our virtual protection group, of course, contains a single virtual machine, which is the Web 2022. So I want to move it to the EE lab. So I'm going to click next. Help if I select it first. So I don't want to do any reverse protection because this is want to move it from Cyrus lab to the EE lab. I'm going to keep the source machine. So I'm not going to untick reverse protection. I'm going to keep the source machine and I'm going to click next. So we're ready to move from the Cyrus lab, this site, to the EE lab, which is our EE cluster. So I'm going to click start the move. It's going to give me a warning about that you've selected auto commit within 60 minutes. So this gives us a 60-minute window, really, that if we're not actually basically, if we're unhappy with the move, that we can effectively cancel and not go forward with the move. So after 60 minutes, it will auto commit, but we can actually force a commit within that time frame. So I'm just going to click start move. Now, what that's now actually going to do, it's going to take that replicated object that it currently has attached to one of the VRAs, and it's actually going to clone a virtual machine from that while replication is actually going on as well. So if I just minimize, if I actually go back to our EE cluster, then we can actually start to see that we've got the Web 2022 virtual machine that's actually started to be created there. It's not quite powered up yet, but eventually it will power up. Now if I just go back, so you can see now that it's actually basically powered on the Web 2022. So if I go back to our portal where we were driving this from, so it's now actually basically telling me that it's moved it. It's going to auto commit in 59 minutes. But now what I can do is I can just, I've lost my mouse cursor again. Oh, okay. So now I can actually basically do a force commit. I want to keep the source VM. So I'm going to click commit. and the move is now ended, and this will basically tidy itself up and remove itself from the VPG. So if I now basically have a little look, I've got a virtual machine. So there's the web 2022 started in the EE cluster, IP address 192.168.182.164. And if I actually basically just do a refresh, then you can clearly see there that the host IP address is 192.168.182.164. The IP address here of this machine is exactly the same as it was before. There we go, done. So in summary, if you actually basically want to use a product that's got far more bells and whistles than VMware Converter, because I have seen several questions about I've tried VMware Converter and it doesn't give us the availability. It's not very good. It doesn't work. The sync mode's not going to work for you anyway if you're using servers that are enabled with UEFI. Then certainly I would recommend that you have a little look at the Zerto product. Far more bells and whistles. But again, it's not free. It's going to require you to have a budget to purchase that. But if you are doing migrations from Azure, Hyper-V, clouds to on-premise or back again, and what is important to you is the availability of your service, then I think that the better product in looking at the two, combining the two, Zerto versus VMware Converter, I don't really think. I think you can see that the Zerto product is far superior. But VMware Converter is free, and it is a very powerful product for free, for nothing. Well, thanks so much for watching this video. I'm going to probably reach out and do some third-party applications a little bit more that integrate with VMware vSphere, so you can see what's around, you can see what we use here in the organization. So I might have a little look at some backup products. I know everybody knows about Veeam. Do you want me to redo a Veeam backup and replication video? Or shall we look at some of the not so known versions that are available that are a lot cheaper? Anyway, so thanks so much for watching, and come back soon for another Hancock's VMware half hour. Goodbye.